you again for joining us. My name is Melissa Waters, and I'm the manager of events here at JMT Consulting. And you're joining us today for the Automate Your Budget Process with Microix and Community Brands MIP webinar. Today we have Ricky George, founder and president of Microix, and Dan Wharton, senior client sales manager at JMT, joining us. Today's webinar is sponsored by JMT Consulting. We're an ERP and financial management solutions firm with 30 years experience that specializes in nonprofits. Before I hand it over to Ricky and Dan, I want to go over a few housekeeping notes and then we'll get started. First of all, this is being recorded. We will send you a copy of the recording within 24 hours of the webinar. We'll also share a copy of the slides for you. At any time, if you have a question during the webinar, there is a Q&A box in your control panel. You can click on that, submit your question, and we will answer those at the end. If we don't get to the question, we will also get that in the follow-up email as well. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Dan to get us started. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Melissa. All right, let's take a look at the agenda. Ricky, I am super pumped today. This is my first webinar, really MC for you, and you're so good with customers. You and I have done plenty of meetings and one-on-one demos, but this is really our first big show. So I'm really excited to have you here. I work with customers to understand challenges and help them overcome them. It's really amazing what you can do. And honestly, I know our viewers are going to really respond the same way. So thanks for joining us, Ricky. Our audience is really lucky to have you. All right, first, a quick round of introductions. My name is Dan Wharton, and joining me is Ricky George. He's President and CEO of Microix, and the reason why so many customers have successfully applied his applications. So we're going to dig a little deeper into the two companies. Then we'll get to the good stuff, the Microix Advanced Budget module. Why does JMT recommend Microix over MIP when it comes to budgeting and forecasting? Well, I can kind of let the cat out of the bag. The short answer is the MIP budget module was built to manage grants, programs, and account segments. It even has a solid collaboration platform, but it doesn't get down into payroll frames. There's other things you can't do. You can't include cost centers in your forecast. Microix does this, and Ricky's going to show us how here in a few minutes. So it should take us about 45 minutes to deliver today's content, and then we'll open things up for Q&A with the audience. Okay? Okay. I had a chance to look at the people who registered, the list of registrants for today's webinar, and I do see a lot of new names I don't recognize. So I'm going to spend a few extra minutes talking about JMT and how we're different from the other consultants you might have worked with in the past. It's important. I also want to start by thanking everyone for taking the time to meet us today. Again, my name is Dan, and I'm a customer account manager. I work with hundreds of nonprofits across the country and assist them with their day-to-day. What does that mean? Well, some examples. You may have a new employee that needs a warm welcome, shown where to go for answers, connect with all the free resources that are available. You may want to import data from another system or eliminate a manual process. Maybe you want to know about MIP Cloud and its benefits. Other examples, you want to expand a grant code, create a new entry, merge two entities, add a user, change your fiscal year, automate AP. Really, the list goes on. So I'm your conduit, I'm your middleman. Customers are always looking for free resources, tips, tricks, and how you can better leverage MIP. I can be that person you call and to ask help, and I can make life easier. What else do we do at JMT? JMT Consulting is the largest MIP reseller, not just in volume, but also in size. We have regional offices in Austin, Nashville, Patterson, New York, and staff everywhere in between and around. We invited Microix to talk about their budget management solution, but the truth is MIP customers do have several options. Over the years, we've observed and learned that there's no such thing as a one-size-fits-all solution. JMT has vetted hundreds of vendors to bring you best-in-class solutions for payroll, financial planning and analysis, cemetery management, AP automation, document management, and more. Some of the names you see here listed. Our mantra is simple. Everything we do will lead to better processes and greater efficiency. Here's a handful of the many nonprofits we served over the years. Take a look and see if there are any names that just jump out at you. If you do, jot them down, get over to us. Maybe we can make an introduction. Maybe we can help make a customer reference. Whatever you'd like to do. Networking is very important in the nonprofit world. Some of these, the point is that some of these organizations are very small foundations. Some are on the opposite side. They have national offices with hundreds of millions of dollars in annual operating budget. I'm saying this because JMT is small enough to deliver a personalized experience, but big enough to handle any large-scale project. So how do we do it? Well, it's really the people. It's a great team of professionals. So I'm in sales and I get to meet and travel and meet a lot of customers. But I'm really surrounded by a great group of folks that are much smarter and much more knowledgeable on the product than I am. And that's kind of why I serve as a conduit. If you have a problem, I make the right introduction, or go get that resource. Many of the people you see here have been with JMT for years, and you may have met them, one or two of them, at a conference or some other event near you. For those who are new to JMT, the guy in the tie is Dennis, and he's a magician when it comes to data and making things work. More often than not, you might have encountered him on a phone call, just trying to reach out at you because you've called in to support and need help building a report, fixing an error, connecting a user, things like that. Carol is our Chief Experience Officer. She's been with us for a number of years. Many of you know her. She's got an incredible way of working with customers. Other customers have met Dougie, Pink Collar, when they first implemented MIP. Well, she's now head of training here at JMT. Lucy, pictured in the middle, and a few others started out as a customer, and then we lured them over to JMT, and now they're helping implement solutions, make changes, learn, things like that. And anyway, it's nice to be able to associate a face with a name. They all do great work, and we all have a common goal: create a great customer experience. I call this the what's in it for you slide. This is where we talk about other customers and how they love working with us. These are fresh. I pulled these reviews in last night. They came from G2.com, and the testimonial from Helen Dow is directly from the Microix.net website. Another resource you may or may not be leveraging is the MIP community. This is an online forum for customers to share ideas and solicit feedback from one another, from other MIP users. Go to these sites, check out what other nonprofits are saying about us, and then give us a call. First thing we're going to do is spend time listening and observing. We're going to ask you what prompted you to reach out. What are the problems you're trying to solve? What are the requirements, not for you, but really the organization overall? What processes and tools do you already have in place, and how can we leverage those? How can we build off of them? Once we have all that information, then we can get someone like Microix involved. The really cool thing about Microix is that their software will adopt your current processes and optimize them. Your staff will now be enabled with the right tools and the right processes. You won't have to change who you are. And more importantly, you won't lose sight of your mission just to make the software work. I see that time in and time out in this business and in other places. All right, enough about JMT. Let's turn our attention towards Microix. Microix has been a great partner for both JMT and our clients. Microix workflow modules help our clients extend the capability of MIP software as they grow and avoid a costly conversion to another platform, a different platform. The stability and consistency of quality of the modules lets JMT recommend these solutions without hesitation. The Microix team's responsiveness and commitment to partners like JMT make this a great relationship. Ricky's now going to walk us through the rest of the presentation. Remember, jot down your questions, do it in the chat room. We'll definitely have an opportunity to address them at the end of the presentation. All right, Ricky, let's see if I can stop sharing my screen here. And let's see if you can do it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dan. Can you hear me okay, Dan?
I can hear you perfect.
Yes. Okay, great.
Loud and clear.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'll go ahead and share my screen now. And thank you everyone for joining the webinar today. My name is Ricky George, and I'll take you through the Microix budget module. And of course, I'll stay back a little bit after to answer any questions you may have, okay? The one thing I wanted to point out is that this solution is fully integrated with your MIP Fund Accounting application. So there's hardly any import-export that is necessary unless you're not using payroll, the payroll module of MIP. It does require a little bit of import if you're outsourcing your payroll module, okay? So just a quick overview of the module. The budget modules is a little bit more advanced features than what you may get with MIP. It's also, its power is also to be able to decentralize that process to managers and program managers, where you will most likely collect budget data. And our workflow gives you ability to route those worksheets through an approval process until it gets to the budget administrator to consolidate them all for reporting purposes. And then once it's finally approved, it's allowed you to transfer to MIP, again, without doing any import exports, and post into the MIP Fund Accounting application. So it's more of a decentralized process, but you can use it if you just have one budget administrator and that's doing all of the budget work. You can use it for single use as well, okay? What I'm gonna show you today is more of a decentralized process. And some of the things that I show you today may not pertain to your specific process, but I'll be able to help answer some of the questions at the end, okay? So just a quick overview here on your on the screen. Let's see, let me get rid of this. Okay. We have what we call a built-in workflow, and the workflow helps you to decentralize the budgeting process. So you may have different departments or programs or locations that you would like those particular managers to input into the budget. You could set up those groups, and you can also assign who will be responsible for creating those budgets and the approval process, what it may look like. So when they enter the budget, it may go to a director for approval before it gets to the budget administrator. So you define the process, and the workflow help you achieve those routing and approval rules, okay? There's also account restrictions, and these account restrictions, again, work in line with your MIP Fund Accounting, where you can restrict certain fund, grant, program, anything that you're trying to restrict that person to maybe view or see. The workflows will help enforce some of those restrictions for you, okay? So the workflow, again, just the ability to apply rules and route things through the approval process that you defined. The budget module also allows, it integrates with the payroll module of MIP. So if there's all of your employees and all of their timesheets with the benefits and salary information, Microix will be able to tap into that and bring them into the product, where you can then start to manage that personnel information. The personnel can be decentralized as well. Most people will centralize it, have HR or payroll department be able to budget personnel information. So again, two options here for the personnel is you can import it from a CSV file if you're using a third-party payroll company, or you can import directly from MIP's payroll module. Once it's imported, there's a list of staff that you'll be able to work with. And this example here, let's bring in one of them. I have one particular person. It brought in the salary information. current salary amount, hourly rate, and so forth. All this information is pulled out of MIP, and the salary allocation, how the person is current salary is being expensed to the different events or programs or departments, and the percentage of their salaries and how it's going to be allocated amount to your grants. There's also the benefit information on the right-hand side, which shows you the benefits, again, from the MIP's default timesheet, brings in those benefit information with the rate and amounts that will automatically calculate for you. All of the benefits will also follow the way that the salaries are allocated. So if you have health, life, and so forth, again, if it's 85% to a specific grant or funding source, it follows your salary allocation, okay? You can budget for open positions. So if there's any open and unfilled position that you have to budget for in the new year, you can go ahead and enter those as well. You can also change the allocation. So for example, if this in the coming year, you need to allocate that person's salary to a different event or department, you can go ahead and change that percentage and allocate it differently here, 25 and 75. And this allocation will not change the current allocation that you have set up for that employee in the payroll module. You're only changing it on the budget side, but the actual allocation and percentages stay intact in MIP. Okay, so this is just a quick overview of what the personnel worksheet looks like. Allows you to budget by employee, each one of them, save the information. You can also plan for increases. For example, if you have a 5% or 2% increase for the upcoming year, you can go ahead and put in that percentage. And then once you enter that percentage, Microix is going to allocate now the 32,000 instead of the 31, and all of your benefits will actually calculate off of the 32 if it's based on the percentages, based on the percentage, okay? Once you've finished your personnel information, again, this can be centralized and your HR payroll department work on this particular budget while your managers input into other expenses and different line items that you may need. So it can be a mixture of both. There's also a report for the personnel that's allow you to view all of the data that you've entered in the personnel information, and you can actually summarize this by either department or program or grant and so forth. It gives you a summary of everything in this one report. You can also filter just for the category salary or benefits or both. So let's say we wanted to filter just on salaries. It gives you a grand total at the bottom, the total amount of salaries for the entire organization based on the events. And if you want to group by events, we can bring the events column up where you can now see the different events in detail here. Okay, there's also a column format where you can see the data, the salary data in a pivot view. So here are all of the employees, and if you wanted to bring in the events category, we can go ahead and drop in the events, and you will be able to see each event and the amount per employee. Okay, so this is just a summary of all of what was entered in the personnel information. Now we get to the budget worksheet, and the budget worksheet, again, allows you to decentralize that process, to send it out to managers, and they can give input into the budget. And that starts with what we call a distribute worksheet. In our distribute worksheet, this is normally done by the budget administrator, where they get all the worksheet prepared to be sent out to the managers. And this is normally done maybe once a year. And the nice thing about this is that information is saved for year after year. So you don't have to rebuild this information. You may have to change a user if they've been replaced or not for the new year's, or someone else will be budgeting for that particular event. So in this example here, I'm telling this software to go ahead and build some worksheets for event 201, 101, 301, and 401. I can tell it how much history we want to include with the budget. Right now, I've asked for 3 years of historical data, which comes from the MIP's general ledger. with a cutoff date of whatever date you specify here. And then we identify the new budget period of what period we're budgeting. For the most part, these worksheets will budget based on one fiscal year, your organization fiscal year, but there are options where you can budget a grant fiscal year versus your organization fiscal year, okay? So in this example here, we can go ahead and have the system produce these worksheets. So when I click on the process and I click on this gear, the system is going to go out to your MIP's general ledger, pull all of the data for this 3-year period from 2018 to 2020 based on the GL from and to and the event. It pulls that information from your general ledger of MIP and pull it into Microix, where then it distributes it to the employee that is signed under the username. An email is sent out to that employee, and they'll be able to log into the software, navigate to the budget, worksheets, and anything that's pushed to them, they'll be able to see here and work with that specific worksheet. They'll only be able to see the worksheet that you've sent to them. They will not be able to see all worksheets in the system, okay? As the budget administrator, you'll have access to all worksheets in the system, or if you're a manager approving or director approving maybe 2 or 3 different departments, your only access is to those worksheets that's assigned to your workflow, okay? Now, in this particular example here, I have, let's look at event 101. So I'm going to go ahead and edit this worksheet. And this is what a typical worksheet looks like. These are the different columns that comes over. And again, the data that you see here comes from your MIP's general ledger in real time. Now, the projected column is optional. This column is just kind of analyzing your current year and telling you what it thinks it's based on your spending habit for the current year, what it projects that you would spend by the end of the year. And this column may be compared to your budget of what you actually budgeted based on what we project you're going to spend based on your spending habit as of today, as of that cutoff date. Okay, so this column is optional. Some people may use this column to reforecast their current year. So this one worksheet can give you a reforecast of your current budget, and then it can also give you a budget for the new year as well. So these 2 columns, that's the purpose. If you do not need this projection, then the worksheet can be built without this column. Okay. Now, the way that the worksheets are built, again, are based on the historical data of MIP. Anything that you have entries or activities in, it pulls that into this one worksheet, and this manager now will be able to work with this particular worksheet and enter the data that's required of them. Now, there's also salary lines here, and these salary lines can be locked out where the managers can see it, but they don't necessarily input into it. And the reason for that is the personnel data that HR or payroll have been working on, the result of these will get synced to their worksheet. When it's synced to their worksheet, managers will be able to view it but not make any changes to it. You can lock them out from it. If you want them to see the detail, it builds the detail. So if I click on the plus icon here, I'll be able to see the different employees that are being charged to my department or location and what % of their salaries being paid by my department. So this information is there for you. Now, some people may not like to see this detail. There's options where you can hide this detail, or there are options where you can use job titles instead of the employee names. Okay, but by default, it shows the employee names and what % your department will pay for that salary. Overall, once everything is brought into the worksheet, it puts in the total budget amount that's computed from the personnel information. It does all of your benefits as well. So all of the lines that are in red, you can drill into it and actually see the detailed narrative that made up that dollar amount. Okay. Now, for other line items on the worksheet, managers can, for example, if we wanted to budget for utilities and maintenance, we can drop in a number here, a total amount on the line, or you can force this, you can have it optional, or you can force what we call narrative. And a narrative simply means that you need explanations or detailed information of what make up this line. And you can be selective in which lines require narratives. So for example, in this utilities and maintenance, you may want the managers to come in here and say, well, AT&T bill, it's a 12-month contract at 882 per month, and it's a 12-month contract, and it totals up to 10,000. And then you may have a utility bill. Let's see, water bill. That's another 12-month contract at whatever cost it is. So you can have them detail this information out for you. So when you do, as an approver or the budget administrator, once you receive this worksheet and you have questions about this particular expense, you can then drill in and see these narrative information. And I'll show you that as we get to the approval part. But the idea here is that each manager can work on these particular worksheet items if they're in charge of multiple events or multiple departments or programs. Most of the time you may have more than one worksheet for that manager. Now, once you've entered the information and you've finalized your information, you can then go ahead and submit for approval. There's other things that you can do on this particular worksheet. For example, if you wanted to take your current budget and increase it by 5% and make that your new budget, there is a formula function here that's available for you to use. So I can go ahead and select all of my lines, and I can tell it, make my D column equal to my C column times 1.5%. So ultimately what I'm trying to do is take my current budget, increase it by 5%, and make that my June budget. And that's how I can just do a quick budget if I'm just doing it based on a percentage. Okay. I can also do the same thing for my actuals, year-to-date actuals. So let's say, for example, I'm 6 months into my budget. I can go ahead and take that 6-month number, which is the A column, divide that by 12, and then divide by 6, sorry, and then multiply by 12 to get an annual amount based off of what I currently spend so far. And maybe I want to increase that by 5%. I can also do that math here as well. Okay. I can be selective in what that formula applies to. I can select certain line items, or I can select all if I need to. Okay. Now, once you've entered this worksheet and you're ready to submit for approval, there's a ability to submit for approval. Before I submit for approval, there are times where we need to allocate this amount based on a monthly amount. So by default, Microix allocates everything 1/12. So monthly distribution here, it allocates that amount by 12 months. Okay. But that's by default. But if I needed to make a change to that, let's say, for example, I wanted to show these particular expenses in the first quarter of the year, I can go ahead and change that, drop down the list, and select first quarter, second quarter, or different distributions that a budget administrator can have available to me. Okay. If I want it to be unique, I can go ahead and add a different allocation. So I can go ahead and click on add here, and I can tell it, well, you know what, I want to spread this amount based on paying that amount in 50% in March and 50% in August. And that's where the funds are going to be allocated. So when it makes the entry into your MIP general ledger, that total amount of 18,000 will be split only in March and April. The other months will be 0. Okay, so I can save that. And if I have another expense that I would like to use that same spread, I can go ahead and choose that spread for another month, for another line item. So if I go ahead and put in 50,000 or 5,000 here, the same 50-50 spread will be for this line as well, which is in March and in August. Okay. So I don't have to come back in here and modify the amounts. If I change this to 10,000, it automatically will reallocate it into those 2 months based on the new dollar amount I entered. Okay, so that's the monthly spread, and that's optional. If you wanted to use 12 months, it's by default, but if you want it to be unique, managers have the ability to make their own allocation if needed. Okay. There's also attachments. If you wanted to attach any backup or any type of information for the approver, you have the ability to attach any Word, Excel, PDF documents to it as well. Now, when I'm ready to submit for approval, I can click on Submit for approval, and this will generate an email notification to my approver, whether it's a director, the CFO, whoever needs to go for approval, it's going to generate an email. And that email will be sent to the person who has to approve the document. Whenever something is sent for approval, I still have visibility of it, so I will see where it is at any given time. So right now it was sent to level 10, and these 2 documents are still here available for me to work on. Okay, and that in this example, I'm showing you here, I'm working on 2 or 3 budgets at one time. Okay, now let's take a look at the reports for at least for the person who's entering the worksheets. If I have maybe 4 or 5 different grants that I'm working on, I need to see a consolidation or see where am I on a budget. I can look at the budget worksheet summary, and this will give me a kind of view of all of my different programs or events, and I can see the total value for each one of them. So if I group it by events, I'll be able to see here's the event 201 and the total amount. Here's the event 301 and total amount. I can also see what worksheet it came from as well. This document number tells me what worksheet it comes from, and I'll be able to see that information with the summary report. Okay, let's go ahead and log out and log in as an approver. Now, once the worksheet is sent to the approver for their review, this is the process and what it will look like. I'm going to go ahead to approve worksheets, and I'll see there, I'm seeing 2 worksheets here waiting to be approved. If I go ahead and open up one, as an approver, I can go ahead and look at the narrative information. I can see what they've entered in the detailed narrative. If I want to counter what they've entered, maybe, for example, let's look at this particular line, this utilities line, and I wanted to counter. I did not want to change what they've entered. I can go ahead and put in some notes of what I would like them to do or counter, and I'll just say I want to reduce this by 500. For whatever reason, I want to go ahead and put in an offset to what they've entered. So I can go ahead and do that, leave the original entries here and just enter a counter to that, which will still reduce that line by 500. Okay, I can go ahead and do that, and I can do it for any line I feel. Another thing a manager can do or an approver can do is reroute a document. Let's say, for example, there are too many things here that needs to be fixed, and I want them to go through and make the correction. I can go ahead and reroute this back to the person who prepared it and say, hey, I need you to reduce the expenses by 15,000 and resubmit for approval. So you're pushing it back to the managers, have them make the edits instead of you. Okay, so there's the reroute functionality to that. If everything looks good and you want to approve this on to the next approver, we can go ahead and click approve, and that will move on to the next approver in the chain. Again, based on your workflow setup. Okay. As an approver and as a budget administrator, you have the ability to consolidate and look at all these worksheets. You may have 10, 20, 30 worksheets out there, and each managers are working on those particular worksheets. You have at any time the ability to consolidate and bring it all together to see it in one report. Even though they haven't submitted for approval yet, you still have the ability to see it in a report. You also have the ability to look at it even though someone else is working on the worksheet. So as an administrator, if I sent a worksheet out to 10 managers and I wanted to kind of peek and see what they've entered so far, I do have the ability to do that through my document search for the approver. I can go ahead and look at a manager's worksheet. I can't make any changes, but I can see what they've entered and see what information they've entered so far. Okay. I can also run a consolidate worksheet report. And this one is, let's say, the events summary report. In this one here, I'm showing the GL and the events, and I'm showing it in a pivot view. So when I view this worksheet, or when I view this report, I'm seeing all of my events, 101, 201, 301, 401, in a column type with all of my expenses. Okay. And it's also comparing my 2020 budget to what I've entered for 2021. If I just wanted to see one of the budget, which is my 2021 budget, I can also do that as well. If I wanted to take this out and just look at the events, all of my events and the total, maybe revenues and expenses, or just look at the expenses, highlight those and chart these out, I can see based on expenses with event, 52% is taken up by the administration, and then 21% or 42% by the program expenses. So I can see a quick chart of expenses just by highlighting those values. Okay. Also have the summary. So let's take a look at the summary. The summary is basically allowing you to use MIP's report groups. So you may have a report group set up in MIP that summarizes all of the other expenses, salaries, federal grant revenues, certain things that you may want to categorize and not show the detail information. You can use that summary option as well, which is the group name here that allows you to see the MIP's report group names that you've built. Okay, similar to your what you create in your financial statement. So this is what it will look like for the budget administrator who needs to pull all of these multiple worksheets that you have out there together in one report. Okay, all of the reports here can be printed and exported to Excel. So if I wanted to send it into Excel, I can go ahead and send it into Excel. This is what it looks like exported to Excel, where you can work with it as it looks, has the number and columns exactly from the reports that you've exported out of Microix. Okay. Now, once all the worksheets are, so we talked about the process. You decentralize it where managers, you first send the worksheets out to the managers give you the input, it's gone through approval process, and then when you're ready to transfer this to MIP, again, there's no import and exporting that you have to do. To get it into MIP, all you would have to do is navigate to Approve Worksheet, select the worksheet, click Approve, and right now it will ask you for a budget version if you wanted to record it as original, revise, or any other version that you have set up. You select that and then you click OK to process. When it transfers to MIP, this is the end result. So here's the worksheet that I've transferred. It tells you it was done by the person, Annabelle Martin. Click on Start. And these are the entries and the document number. So this is the document number that came from Microix, the 1009. It has a description of the document, and here are all the line items that it created for you with the effective date. Okay, so again, using the 112, it breaks it all up into the different months, and then your description, which are your most likely journal ledger description. So this is the completed budget, and you can go ahead and post this into MIP. Now, when you post something into MIP and you realize that there's a change that needs to be made, or there was a mistake that you didn't realize, you can still fix that even though it's posted in MIP. Microix allows you to retransfer a worksheet, and if it retransfers the same worksheet, it will ask you to go ahead and replace it if it sees that it was posted already in MIP. So you don't have to do a reversal in MIP to reverse that budget. Microix will handle all that for you. It will take it out of MIP and go ahead and push the new entries that you've corrected. Okay. Now, any anytime the budgets are posted in MIP and you wanted your managers to kind of look throughout the year and see where they stand as far as activities against that budget, there's the display account balance. So let's say, for example, if you've approved the 2021 or 2022 budget, it's all posted in MIP, and you want managers to come in here on a monthly basis to kind of see where they stand, what they've spent so far, what they have balance in each one of their account. Without giving them access to MIP, you can go ahead and control that through what we call the display account balance report. So in this display account balance report, they put in the period, put in the workflow that they belong to, click on view, and it's going to go ahead and automatically pull the data. And this is coming from your Gen Ledger in real time. Okay. So for example, it shows the budget column of what you've actually posted in MIP as far as the budget, what you've spent so far. If you don't use encumbrance, this will be 0, and then the balance for each one of your account. So for example, if I am looking at office supplies, I have a total expense of $1,965. I can also drill into that. So without giving them access to MIP, I can drill into this and see all of the AP invoices or all of the different JV entries that affected that account. I can see that in real time here on the display account balance. If you go into MIP and you post something, it will show up here in real time. If you created something and it's unposted, you will still see it as well. So if you have a batch sitting out there that you haven't processed AP invoices for, the managers will still be able to see that, but it'll be under the unposted, just like how we have here. Okay. So I hope I've given you a quick, I know I want to leave some room for any question and answers here. So I'll kind of wrap things up now, but I hope I've given you enough information to kind of give you an idea of what the budget module can help you do and give you a kind of quick overview of the process. Okay. So Melissa, I believe it's 15 minutes that we reserved for any question and answer.
Yes, this is perfect. Thank you, Ricky. We do have a few questions that I'll read out to you. First question that came in is, what if you have a budget module in MIP?
If you have the budget module in MIP, then you can still use the budget module in MIP if needed. But for most people, they may stop using the MIP budget module and start using the Microix module only because they may find more value in it.
Excellent. All right. Next question. How does the salary budgeting work if you are using an outside payroll service like Paycom instead of using the MIP modular?
Okay. So for anyone who's doing outside payroll, when there's an import process that allows you to import from MIP, which is the default. But for anyone who's doing outside payroll, you'll have to do an import to a CSV file. And the CSV file, it allows you to create an import template. And I'll show you what that template looks like. So it will produce a template for you. Actually, let me show you with some data. So this is what the worksheet or the spreadsheet looks like. It shows you what information Microix needs to import into the system. You would just have to get your third party or information into this format, and then you'll be able to import it into Microix. So it has, the different salary amount, it has the GL accounts, it has percent increase if you want to increase their salary and so forth. All of the information, hourly rate, current salary. So it has all the information you would need to import that into Microix. Now, this personnel, just to be clear, personal information is optional. You don't have to use the personal information. If you wanted to, if you have a spreadsheet that you're generating salaries from and you just want to plug in those numbers or import those numbers, you can import those directly into a budget worksheet if needed. Okay, so again, if you have the total salary by employee and the allocation of each, you do have the option to just create a worksheet and import all of the salaries into that worksheet if needed. Okay.
All right, next question. Can you use the system for position control by position name and number? Track all activity of a position and the personnel and budgets assigned to it.
It is difficult unless you have a segment to track those positions. If you have a segment in MIP, now Microix can do it by position, but when it sends it over to MIP and you need to be able to track to that level, MIP would require some sort of segment to identify those positions. So you can track expenses and everything to that position. If I understood the question, hopefully I did understand the question, but you can ask a follow-up if I did not answer it clearly for you. But again, my definition or understanding of the position is that there's a segment here that's called position. So whenever you're budgeting that person, you budget position, that is sent into MIP and posted into the general ledger, and you can then run reports. You can and tie expenses to those positions and look at not just salaries, but other expenses that are tied to that position.
All right, next question. Can you exclude S&B line items on the manager's working budget and just show the salary line on the final budget? We do not want managers to see detail of salaries and benefits.
Yes, so in this example, I showed here where you do not want to see these details. So if you do not want to see these details, when you set up the system, so when we go into the workflow, I can check this option that says do not include salary narrative on worksheet. So when I check this option, if I go ahead and push the worksheet information again with the salary data, so I'm just going to refresh it here. So notice before I refresh, I can see the salary detail, but I can go ahead and refresh that. And once I'm finished there, the salary data comes over still the 55,000, but the narrative is not there. The detail that makes up the 55 is no longer there. Okay. So you have an option to include it or not to include it.
Perfect. Okay, one other question so far, and then we'll see if anything else comes in. Says, does the system have the ability to assist in building the revenue? More detailed worksheets building to the revenue? For instance, can you put in how many expected ticket sales to go to an event revenue?
Okay, that's a great question, and we may need to follow up with some of those whenever you deal with revenue. What we find with revenue, we don't have specifically one that actually works specifically for revenue, but what we've retrofitted, kind of retrofit, is the ability to use the personnel information for that. So revenues, we set up revenue. We set up a revenue account here, use a revenue GL, and then we use these same formulas. So for example, the number of classroom or the number of events times a certain rate. So we use the same features of a personnel, which does a lot of the multiplication for us to come up with our revenue. So number of patients times an hour rate, or number of days times some sort of rate will get us to that revenue amount. So for the personal information is similar, but we use this for those purposes as well, if you needed to come up with a calculation for your revenues based on participants and the rates and so forth. So you won't use the benefit side, but more so the salary information. And we don't, the software does not care that you set up a revenue account on here, even though it's expecting salaries. It still will allow you to do that, to enter any type of GL account here, and not just tied to salaries. Okay. But again, it's simple. It may be just too simple for you, and we may need to do a follow-up to kind of get into some of the calculations you're doing on the revenues to see if this really can handle that specific need. And the good thing about it is that if you do, let's say if we were able to find out that the personal information can handle those type of calculations, when it transfers to the worksheet, um, when it do transfers to the worksheet, if it's being allocated to different cost center, department, grants, and so forth, it works the same way as the personnel, where that portion of the revenue will just be sent into this one worksheet. So if 10% of that overall revenue goes to this event, then only 10% will show on this worksheet. Okay.
All right.
Any
So
other?
far, oh, sorry, go ahead, Ricky.
Oh, no, I was saying any other questions or any other follow-up from the question that was answered?
Not as of yet, so we'll give it just a minute to see if anybody else has any questions. And if not, I'll let Dan wrap it up for us, but we'll wait for just a second to see if anything comes in.
Sure.
And just so you all know, we will be following up with you after the webinar. So if you want to go more in depth with the questions that were asked, we're happy to do that in a follow-up as well. All right, I don't see anything else coming in. So Dan, I'm going to let you take it away. And Ricky, I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
All right, Ricky, can you let me share my screen?
Yes, I went ahead and stopped sharing now.
Okay, so last couple slides here, folks, and thank you very